In the Mayan world, temples held a terrifying secret. Captured warriors were sealed inside smoke chambers, where sacred incense filled their lungs, and priests claimed their final breath became an offering to the gods. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button so this video reaches more history fans. Your support helps us continue exploring more content like this. Let's get started. The story begins with King Yaxcucmo, a ruler whose reign marked the consolidation of power in the Mayan city-state of Copan. He ascended to the throne in the early 5th century, inheriting a kingdom fragmented by local rivalries. His early years were dedicated to strengthening central authority. Yaxcucmo was noted for his strategic alliances with neighboring city-states. Through marriage and diplomacy, he expanded the influence of Copan across southern Mesoamerica. These alliances also ensured the flow of tribute and resources to the capital. One of the hallmarks of his reign was the initiation of ambitious building projects. He commissioned temples, palaces, and ceremonial platforms designed to reinforce both political and religious authority. Architecture became a tool for demonstrating the king's divine mandate. The king maintained a close relationship with the priesthood. Mayan religion emphasized the king as an intermediary between gods and humans, and Yaxcucmo performed rituals to solidify this position. His actions were seen as essential to maintaining cosmic order. Economic reforms were another feature of his rule. He organized the collection of tribute from rural settlements and oversaw agricultural production. These measures increased the wealth of Copan and allowed the city to support large-scale ceremonial activities. Yaxcucmo also emphasized military organization. His armies were structured to defend the city-state and to conduct campaigns in surrounding regions. These military successes enhanced the prestige of the king and deterred potential challengers. During his reign, the king established a codified system of law. These regulations governed property rights, trade, and ritual conduct. The legal system reinforced the king's authority by demonstrating that his rule was both structured and divinely sanctioned. The king promoted literacy and the arts. Copan became a center of hieroglyphic writing and sculpture. Scribes recorded the deeds of the king, ensuring that his accomplishments would be remembered by future generations. Religious ceremonies under Yaxcucmo were elaborate and highly organized. Festivals coincided with celestial events, reflecting the Mayan understanding of astronomy. These ceremonies served to unite the population and reinforce the sacred role of the king. He also emphasized infrastructure development, including road networks and water management systems. These improvements facilitated trade and communication, enabling the city-state to thrive economically and politically. The king's diplomacy extended beyond neighboring city-states. Trade routes connected Copan to distant regions, allowing for the exchange of jade, obsidian, cacao, and other valuable commodities. Yaxcucmo ensured these networks remained secure. He carefully managed succession planning. The king trained heirs in both military strategy and ritual practice. This preparation was intended to prevent instability upon the transition of power and to sustain the dynasty for generations. Under his rule, Copan saw population growth. Urban planning and agricultural expansion allowed the city to accommodate more inhabitants. Residential structures were organized around ceremonial centers, reflecting the integration of daily life with religious practice. Yaxcucmo also standardized taxation. A portion of agricultural produce, craft goods, and luxury items was collected to support the administration and temple activities. This system formalized the redistribution of resources in the kingdom. Military campaigns were recorded in stone inscriptions. These monuments detailed victories, conquests, and captives taken. They served both as historical records and as instruments of intimidation against potential enemies. The king maintained personal involvement in judicial matters. He presided over cases involving major disputes, particularly those affecting noble families. His judgments reinforced his image as a fair and divinely guided ruler. Religious texts and codices from the period suggest that Yaxcucmo practiced daily rituals. These included offerings of incense, food, and occasionally blood, emphasizing the reciprocal relationship between the king and the gods. Education for the nobility flourished under his reign. Young elites were trained in writing, mathematics, astronomy, and ritual practice. This education ensured the continuity of governance and priestly knowledge within the ruling class. Yaxcucmo also invested in defensive structures. Walls, elevated platforms, and fortifications were built to protect against attacks from rival city-states. These constructions reflected both practical and symbolic aspects of authority. Trade regulation was strictly enforced. Merchants and traders were monitored to ensure the proper flow of goods and compliance with taxation rules. This helped maintain economic stability and reinforced the king's control over commerce. The king's dietary and lifestyle choices were carefully recorded. Royal feasts and offerings included exotic foods and beverages, demonstrating the wealth and cultural sophistication of Köpen under his leadership. He fostered artisanship, commissioning sculptors, painters, and architects. The artistic output of the city became a symbol of political power and religious devotion, reflecting the king's patronage of culture. Jacques Cuckmo frequently traveled within his kingdom to oversee administration and engage with local leaders. These journeys reinforced his visibility and allowed him to directly assess the conditions of his subjects. The king's reign coincided with advances in astronomical observation. Mayan priests collaborated with him to track celestial cycles, which informed agricultural planning and ceremonial timing. These observations also reinforced the sacred authority of the monarchy. Public ceremonies often featured the king prominently. He participated in bloodletting rituals, a practice believed to sustain the gods and maintain cosmic balance. His personal involvement in these acts strengthened his legitimacy as ruler. Infrastructure projects included the construction of ball courts and marketplaces. These facilities supported both recreational and commercial activities, highlighting the king's attention to civic life as well as religious obligations. Jacques Cuckmo encouraged the creation of monumental inscriptions. Stelae and altars recorded his lineage, victories, and religious acts. These monuments served to legitimize the monarchy and communicate royal authority to the populace. The king's advisors included both military leaders and priests. Their counsel influenced decisions on governance, diplomacy, and ceremonial matters. This combination of expertise helped maintain a balance between secular and spiritual power. He implemented standardized weights and measures for trade. These systems improved economic efficiency and reduced disputes, reinforcing the central authority of the king over commercial activity. Royal courts operated as centers of justice and administration. The king presided over major cases, while minor disputes were handled by appointed officials. This hierarchical system ensured consistent governance throughout the kingdom. Jacques Cuckmo emphasized continuity of religious practice. Annual rituals and festivals adhered to a structured calendar, integrating the king's authority with the cyclical patterns of Mayan cosmology. Diplomatic envoys were sent to distant regions to negotiate trade agreements and political alliances. These missions enhanced the reputation of Köpen and extended the king's influence beyond the immediate kingdom. The king's reign lasted several decades. During this time, Köpen experienced political stability, economic growth, and cultural flourishing. His leadership established patterns that would shape the city-state for generations. He maintained records of births, deaths, and notable events within the royal household. This practice ensured accurate documentation for succession planning and religious observances. Jacques Cuckmo also oversaw the cultivation of sacred sites and shrines. These locations were integral to religious life, serving as centers for offerings and ceremonies conducted under royal supervision. The king's policies balanced centralization with local autonomy. While he maintained ultimate authority, regional leaders were granted responsibilities for administration, tribute collection, and ritual performance. Education in astronomy, mathematics, and writing prepared the next generation of nobles for governance. These subjects were intertwined with religious knowledge, reflecting the integrated nature of Mayan society under his rule. Royal patronage of the arts included the commissioning of murals, sculptures, and decorative objects. These artifacts conveyed religious narratives, political messages, and the king's prestige. Jacques Cuckmo implemented systems for water management, including reservoirs and canals. These measures supported agriculture, urban sanitation, and the stability of food supplies for the growing population. His reign emphasized the symbolic role of the king in maintaining cosmic and social order. Every political, religious, and military action was framed as serving the gods and ensuring the prosperity of Köpen. Through these policies and initiatives, Jacques Cuckmo established a legacy of strong governance, cultural achievement, and religious authority. His reign provided the foundation for Köpen's continued prominence in the Mayan world. The smoke chambers were a unique feature of Mayan ceremonial architecture. Constructed within stone temples, these chambers were small, enclosed rooms designed for ritual purposes. Captured warriors and criminals were brought to these chambers under the supervision of priests. Their confinement was both physical and symbolic, representing submission to divine authority. Sacred incense, often derived from copal resin, was burned in the chamber. The thick aromatic smoke quickly filled the space, making it difficult to breathe. The priests believed that the smoke carried prayers and offerings to the gods. The suffocation of captives was seen as a way to send their final breath as a spiritual contribution. These rituals were performed in accordance with precise calendrical timing. The Mayans placed great importance on aligning ceremonies with astronomical events and cycles. The chambers were constructed with stone walls and small ventilation openings. This design allowed smoke to accumulate while limiting airflow, maximizing its suffocating effect. Before confinement, captives were often stripped of personal belongings and adorned with ritual markings. These preparations emphasized the ceremonial rather than purely punitive nature of the practice. The process was carefully overseen by priests trained in ritual law. Their role was to ensure that the ceremony adhered to religious protocol and that the offering to the gods was properly conducted. Copal incense was preferred for its dense aromatic smoke. It was considered sacred and was regularly used in Mayan rituals for purification, offerings, and communication with deities. The suffocation process could last several minutes to an hour, depending on the specific ritual and the intended spiritual effect. Timing was crucial for the efficacy of the offering. Prisoners were sometimes bound in simple restraints. The bindings were intended to limit movement, ensuring the smoke reached all parts of the body evenly. Historical records suggest that both warriors captured in battle and individuals accused of serious offenses could be subjected to this ritual. It served as both punishment and spiritual sacrifice. The chambers were often located in temple complexes associated with high-ranking priests. This proximity emphasized the sacred authority of those overseeing the ritual. Smoke accumulation created an environment of extreme discomfort. Victims experienced intense coughing, dizziness, and eventually unconsciousness as oxygen levels decreased. Observers of the ritual were usually limited to priests and elite witnesses. The secrecy reinforced the sacred and solemn nature of the practice, distinguishing it from public punishment. Ceremonial chants accompanied the burning of incense. Priests recited invocations intended to guide the captive spirit toward the divine realm. The smoke chambers were part of a broader system of ritualized warfare. Captives taken in battle were treated according to strict religious protocol rather than arbitrarily punished. These rituals were carefully documented in Mayan codices and stele. Records focused on the ceremonial and spiritual significance of the act rather than the suffering endured. Priests also performed purification rites on themselves before and after the ritual. This ensured their spiritual readiness and maintained the integrity of the offering to the gods. Some chambers were equipped with multiple compartments. This allowed priests to conduct consecutive rituals without interruption, maintaining a continuous stream of ceremonial offerings. The use of smoke had symbolic meaning beyond suffocation. It was associated with transformation, purification, and communication between the mortal and divine realms. Captured warriors were sometimes given ceremonial garments or headdresses prior to confinement. These items symbolized their temporary status as participants in a sacred rite. The priests monitored the captive's condition carefully. They were responsible for determining the exact moment at which the ritual would conclude. Based on religious timing rather than physical endurance alone, incense production was a specialized craft. Resin was harvested from specific trees, processed, and sometimes combined with aromatic herbs to create the dense smoke used in the chambers. The chamber walls were often inscribed with glyphs and symbols. These carvings reinforced the ritual context, connecting the physical act of suffocation to the divine narrative of the city-state. Observations from archaeological studies suggest that the chambers were reused over time. Regular maintenance ensured that the spaces remained suitable for ritual practice. The suffocation process was understood to have spiritual significance. The Mayans believed that the soul of the captive could be guided to the gods through the act of inhaling the sacred smoke. Priests interpreted the reactions of the captives as indicators of divine favor. Struggling or gasping could be seen as evidence that the offering was accepted or that spiritual forces were engaged. In some cases, captives were ritually purified before entering the chamber. This could involve bathing, fasting, or ceremonial anointment, preparing them for their role in the sacred ritual. The chambers were strategically placed within temple complexes to facilitate observation by elite witnesses. These witnesses could include rulers, military leaders, and visiting dignitaries. Timing of the rituals often corresponded with specific calendar events. The Mayan calendar was central to religious and civic life, and precise alignment was considered necessary for the ritual's success. Smoke density was controlled by the amount and type of incense burned. Priests were trained to gauge the effect carefully, balancing suffocation with ceremonial requirements. The ritual had multiple layers of meaning. It functioned as a religious act, a demonstration of political power, and a method of controlling captured enemies. The chambers were sometimes used for non-lethal ritual suffocation. In these cases, captives were removed before death, symbolically participating in the ceremony without permanent harm. The psychological impact on both participants and observers reinforced social hierarchy. Witnesses understood the power of priests and rulers to direct life and death through sacred practice. Artifacts associated with the chambers, such as incense burners and ceremonial tools, have been found in archaeological excavations. These items provide insight into the technical aspects of the rituals. The smoke chambers were not uniformly used across all Mayan city-states. Practices varied according to local traditions, religious interpretation, and political context. Chamber construction utilized local stone and architectural techniques. Builders considered both structural integrity and ritual function in their designs. The suffocation rituals were integrated with broader ceremonial cycles. They often coincided with offerings to deities related to war, fertility, and the natural world. Captured warriors were sometimes honored with additional rites posthumously. These could include placement in sacred tombs or symbolic depictions in temple reliefs. The practice reflected the intertwining of religion, politics, and military activity. It was a formalized system for managing enemies and reinforcing the authority of the state and its spiritual leaders. Priests maintained strict control over access to the chambers. Unauthorized entry was forbidden, as it could compromise the ritual's efficacy and spiritual significance. The chambers also served as a deterrent. Knowledge of the ritual spread through Mayan society, discouraging rebellion and reinforcing the consequences of capture. The smoke rituals illustrate the sophisticated understanding of human physiology and spiritual symbolism. They combine sensory, environmental, and religious knowledge into a coherent ceremonial practice. These rituals continued for generations, becoming an established element of Mayan warfare and religious observance. They reflected the cultural values and beliefs of a society where spiritual and temporal power were inseparable. The conclusion of the smoke chamber ritual focused on the transformation of the captive's spiritual state. Priests believed that the soul was purified through the inhalation of sacred incense. Once the suffocation ended, priests assessed whether the ritual had achieved its intended spiritual purpose. If the captive survived, they were sometimes ritually cleansed. In cases of death, the body was treated according to religious customs. The remains could be placed in tombs or used in further ceremonial practices, linking the mortal and divine realms. The smoke was understood as a medium connecting the physical and spiritual worlds. By inhaling it, captives' final breaths were thought to ascend to the gods, carrying messages and prayers. Priests recorded the outcomes of these rituals in codices, and stele visi inscriptions emphasized the spiritual success of the ceremony rather than the physical suffering of the participants. The ritual reinforced social hierarchies. Citizens and warriors recognized the authority of the king and priesthood, understanding that both temporal and divine powers were closely linked. Over time, the smoke chambers became an established method of ritualized punishment and sacrifice. Their consistent use reflected both religious conviction and political strategy. The chambers also served as a deterrent. Awareness of their function discouraged rebellion and discouraged enemies from challenging Mayan authority in warfare. The ceremonial use of smoke illustrated a broader Mayan cosmology. Air and breath were considered sacred elements, essential for life and for maintaining balance between humans and the gods. Captured warriors were sometimes remembered in inscriptions and reliefs. These records celebrated their role in the ritual, framing their death or suffering as an offering that strengthened the kingdom spiritually. Priests continued to refine the practice, adjusting incense mixtures and chamber design to enhance ritual efficacy. Knowledge of airflow, smoke density, and timing was crucial to achieving the intended spiritual outcomes.